Hi, welcome to Chris's Clock Repair. Today I'm really excited to show you this Cuckoo clock that I'll be repairing, which is really cool because it's got the Axeman here and these two loggers sawing the log, which is a really cool feature. I'll show you how that works on the inside. But this clock I received all the way from Thompsonville, Illinois, from Jerry. He's getting it repaired for his wife, Cindy, who inherited this clock from her grandmother. And she remembers when this clock was hanging on the wall when she was a child. So I'm really excited to have the opportunity to bring this family heirloom back to its original grandeur. And because family is really important. All right. Hope you enjoy the video. In this video, I'm going to go through the complete repair process. I'll begin by disassembling the movement, polishing the pivots, and then we'll go through the entire bushing procedure from recentering the pivot holes to reaming them out, chamfering them, pushing in the bushings, broaching each of the holes, make sure all the wheels fit properly, then we'll clean the movement. We'll put the clock in time and assemble it. And then I repair the music governor and the music box. So let's get started. So here we have the original condition of the clock. We start by removing the hands. The bellows are in good condition. And this is how the saw on the front of the clock moves. There's a wire here attached to the verge. So as it ticks and tocks, it moves this saw back and forth. So now I start disassembling the clock, first by removing the bellows. And a little handy trick is to tape the bellows wire to the bellows so you don't have any question as to which wire goes to which bellow. And now I remove the chains from the music box and the movement. And then there's 4 screws here that we need to remove, and we can take the movement out. And before removing the music box, I like to use a pencil to mark its position, because sometimes aligning these can be difficult. It was not in the case of this clock, but sometimes it is, so I just do it as a general rule. And then it's held in place with these 2 screws, which we'll take out. And here's the movement, which I'm going to disassemble and take a closer look at, find out what pivot holes we need to repair, and go about repairing this movement. I'm going to start by removing the lift wires on the back. The gong hammer is held in place with a spring wire, and these just lift out of the movement like so. Then there's a single screw holding on the star wheel. And then it should just lift off with a little bit of turning. Here you can see the pivot in the hole, showing you the amount of wear. It's pretty severe. You can really see that. So we're going to have some bushing work to do. So now I'm going to remove the front works. Here I'm taking off the rack. Then I'm going to advance the snail by moving the maintenance wheel so that I can gain access to the E-clip there. And then I can just lift off the rack and the maintenance wheel there, or the minute wheel. Then the spring comes off. I'm going to take the wire that catches the fan on the music box off. And now I've got to take off the 2 wires here in the front. The way I do that is I take a little piece of wood, attach it to the back, give it a nice whack with the hammer, and those will just pop out like so. And it's helpful to have a third hand here, which fortunately I have an invisible third hand from my co-worker Brendan. Alright, so now all that remains is to remove the gathering pallet, which I'll use this gear puller to do. And there we go. So now just taking another look at the wear here. You can use this contact cleaner, spray the pivot holes to clear the gunk out of the way so you can see it much better. And here I'm showing you in slow motion the motion of the pivot in its hole, so you can really see the wear there. And I'm going to do that for the rest of the pivots so I can determine exactly which holes I'm going to have to bush, and so I can clearly see the direction it's moving, so I can mark the movement for my cuts. Now, taking a look at the music box, you'll see here the music roll shifts on the shaft. It's not supposed to do that. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm going to need to repair that, and I do later on in this video. So now I've marked the direction of cuts for all the pivot holes that I'm going to rebush, and the way I mark them is I mark them in the direction that I'm going to cut, which means on the unworn side. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to remove the plates. And then I'll remove the wheels, and I'll take a look at each one just to make sure there isn't any obvious damage anywhere, which is not typical for these types of Cuckoo clocks, but you always do want to examine each of the wheels. First thing we'll do is polish the pivots, which my technique is a little controversial, but here I've got it in the drill press, and I'm using some emery paper and oil But it turns out pretty nice, and haven't had any issues with it. So now I'll begin the bushing procedure, and I'll start by recentering the pivot holes that are worn. And I do have another video where I show how this is done in detail, and you can click the link above if you'd like to watch that. So now that I've got all the worn pivot holes recentered on the front plate, we'll move to the back plate and apply the same procedure. And now I'll make the final cut of each hole to their final size with a reamer in the drill press. I place the movement on a jar, applying even pressure, allowing the plate to move within my fingers so that the reamer goes through the hole, finding the center and finishing to the final diameter, getting ready to push my bushings in. And I apply the same procedure here to the back plate. And now that I've got the final cuts done, we'll finish off each of the holes on both the front and the back side of each plate with a chamfer cut, and then we'll be ready to push our bushings in. And then we'll be ready to push our bushings in. And here's a closer look at the finished holes. See, they're nice and smooth. And we'll just finish it off on the other side of the plate and do the same for the back plate. Now we're ready to push our bushings in. We'll select our bushings from our box, place my plate onto a flat block underneath a rod with the oil sink facing the outside of the plate, and I push them from the inside of the plate. That way the oil sink is flush with the outside of the plate. And I know that these bushings are too tall for this plate, so we'll have to cut them down. And I know it's an added step, but the reason I do it this way is I only have to order one size height of bushing rather than ordering multiple different heights. It's more economical that way. And here's the finished back plate. And we'll move to the front plate. And here I've got the plate on a smaller block. That way I can maneuver around the center shaft. And here's our finished plate. So now we're going to cut these bushings down, and we're going to use a Bergeon pivot cutter. It's got a nice little pin in the center to guide the cut, and we'll put this into our tool holder and into our drill press, placing the plate flat on the block, and we'll cut these down so that they're flush with the plate. So here is our finished cut. You can see that the bushing is now flush with the plate. And we'll do that for the rest of the bushings, and we end up with the final product. Looks pretty nice. So now we'll do the same procedure on the front plate using a smaller block, again so that I can maneuver around the center shaft and other components. Next, we're going to pre-drill the holes, which will make our broaching procedure a little bit easier by finding a drill bit that is just shy of the diameter of the pivot. And we'll do that by selecting a proper drill bit, and we'll place that into our press, placing the plate onto a jar and pre-drilling these holes, and that way we have less to cut with our broach. Now that all the holes are pre-cut, we can size the pivot holes with our broach. You can see here that the pivot almost goes into the hole. So we'll select the right size 5-sided broach, put it into our pin vise, and then we'll make the final cuts by hand. And you want to make sure from both directions that you're cutting straight. And this is probably the part of the clock repair procedure that requires the most dexterity and practice, so that you're cutting the hole straight. And you want to test after your cut the motion of the wheel in each direction. And you want to see about a 5 to 7 degree tilt all the way around evenly. And I'll show you that here in a second when I finish this cut. So that's about what you want to see. So now we'll finish the hole off by countersinking the inside and outside of the bushing to remove any burrs. Then I'm going to peg the hole with a toothpick before I use a smoothing broach, which will smooth the hole off and harden the bushing surface. So we'll put our smoothing broach in our pin vise, and we'll place a drop of oil there on the pivot hole, and then we'll use our smoothing broach, and that'll finish off our hole. So that looks pretty nice. Nice even action all the way around, with about a 5 to 7 degree tilt. And we'll apply the same procedure for each of the pivots on each wheel, and then we're ready for assembly. I always assemble the movement before final cleaning so that I can test the trains and make sure everything is working properly to verify I don't have to make any additional cuts, so that I only have to clean the movement once. So here the action is really nice, and now I'm testing end shake. Each of the wheels should be able to move freely up and down. Like so. But you can see here, like on the fly, there's not much end shake there. Here on the escape wheel as well, hardly moves at all. So I do have to cut down the bushings a little bit more to provide more end shake. So we'll go ahead and do that. So now I'm ready to disassemble the movement and clean it, which my technique could be considered controversial, and I was hesitant to show you, but here it goes anyway. But I put the plate and the wheels and all the various parts into a bin with clock cleaning solution, and then I place this massage tool, which I use as an agitator, and I place it in there for about 10 minutes. And this is Brendan, my fellow clock repairman, demonstrating. We remove it from the cleaning solution. See, it's nice and clean. We'll rinse the solution off, and then we will spray it with denatured alcohol before we dry it with a hairdryer. Now we'll peg each of the holes with a toothpick to remove any remaining grime or cleaning solution. And then I'll use a toothpick on each of the wheels to make sure the pinions are free of any cleaning solution or any debris that may not have come off. And then a lot of times on these pinions there's rust on these Cuckoo clocks. So I use this brush in my drill press to clean those up real nice. And then I'll spray them with contact cleaner to remove any debris that may remain from the brush. Now we're ready for the assembly of the movement. Now when you're assembling the movement on these Cuckoo clocks, you do not have to worry about the position of the warning pin. The clock can be set in time with the gathering pallet after the movement is assembled. Now I've got the movement assembled, and I'm checking the action of the trains, and they're moving really nice. It's ticking really well. And now I'm going to use my oiling pen to oil each of the pivots, placing a small drop of oil on the side of the pivot in the oil sink for each pivot hole. And I place a drop of oil on 2 of the escape wheel teeth. Alright, now we're going to install the front works. And the first 2 pieces that I put on are these black levers here. And I place them on basically the reverse of how I took them off. I pushed this clip on using a bench key and a hammer. But unfortunately, I forgot to hit the record button, so we're going to miss that part. With these two levers installed, we can now put the gathering pallet on and put the clock in time. And I'm going to demonstrate that here. And basically you want to advance the warning pin so that it locks on this black lever with the wing of that wheel that's rotating at about horizontal. And I'll demonstrate that here, and then I'll explain it in detail. So you see here when I advance the train and the pin locks on the lever, that black wing on the wheel there is at horizontal, and that's where I want it to be. Now I place my minute wheel, and then the snail goes over the center shaft like so. Then we'll put our rack on. And our rack is too close to the pin on that gathering pallet so that it doesn't drop properly. You can see that here. It's way too close to the teeth on that rack. So I'm going to adjust the position of that gathering pallet slightly by locking down my train with my clothing pin and then rotating it to the right so that it's a little bit further away from those teeth. Now you can see the pin on the gathering pallet has enough clearance there so that when I drop the rack, it can move freely. It's not bound by that pin in any way. So now we'll lock down our gathering pallet with another hit of the hammer. Test it again.
I always found that odd.
And there she is. Okay, now, so when you're putting the gathering pallet on, you want to make sure that the warning pin, which locks here on this arm, here's the warning pin. Warning pin here locks on this arm when it drops into the gathering pallet. But when it locks, you want to make sure that number one, the lift lever has completed its cycle. So the rack is at the bottom, like so. And this wing on this wheel that the gathering pad is attached to, you want it about horizontal, right there. So when I go around, it'll lock at about that horizontal position. So that way, when the clock warns, I'm going to advance so it warns it's not going to lift too high, causing the bird to come out during warning. You don't want that. All right, so now that I got my gathering pallet in the right position with my warning pin locked, like so, I'm going to lock my fly, my clothing pin, and then I'm going to set the rack and snail for the proper hour. So now I'm going to make sure, I'm going to go through, that's the hour because it lifted higher. That's the half hour. Hour, half hour. So I'm going to go to hour just after the hour drop. Half hour, hour. That's the hour. So now I want to position the snail so it drops at 12 o'clock on the snail, like so. And then I'm going to test it. Half hour, hour. Half hour, hour. Lock down my rack. Put on the spring. Now we're going to put on our lift wires and our star wheel. I'm just going to gently place this over the shaft. Just lightly put it on there so I can make final adjustments. So when it locks, I want to advance the star wheel. So that just finishes 1, 2, 3, right there. Rack drops. Alright, so when I install this piece that stops the fly during morning, I want to make sure my rack is not down so that this is lifted. I want this piece all the way down, and I'm going to hold it down so it doesn't move on me. And I'm going to put that on the shaft here. And I want to exaggerate the position to the right So when I make an adjustment to the left, I don't cause my piece in the front to lift when I lock it down. See there? So when I move it, the piece on the front will move down, not up. See? See, this piece moves together with the wire in the back. So I exaggerate the position to the right, looking from the back, so that when I adjust it this way, this piece goes down instead of up. Because if I adjust it this way, it's going to lift this piece up with it. So I'm going to have this slightly loose on the shaft for the final adjustment in the movement. So this will move. Now for the music box, I'm going to remove the governor and clean it. This music box is actually pretty worn, or the governor rather. And I will bush that worn pivot on the governor later in this video. Alright, while the governor is cleaning, I'll clean the bird up a little bit, and what I use is Awesome, and I dilute it in some water. And that does a really good job of cleaning up the crud on the plastic bird. It's like night and day. And there she is. All right, so here's the clean governor. And we're going to oil the pivots on the governor, and then we'll reinstall it in the music box and see how she does. Okay, so I'm going to reinstall this governor. Looks like I may need to make an adjustment so that the music stops in the proper position. It's really quiet. It appears the tines on the music roll are worn, but that's not something I'm going to repair. See, it should have stopped in this blank space here. So it's traveling a little bit too far. but it's a little unusual because it is dropping in the beginning of that hole. Alright, so I found the problem with this music box. This wheel here is in the wrong position because this music roll moves on the shaft instead of moving with the wheel. So what I'm going to do is lock this down, the wheel in the right position, here, and now while this is locked, I'm going to move the music roll to its correct position. Which is here. And now I'm going to use some epoxy right there on the end. And put some epoxy right here so that that music roll does not move on its shaft, and then it'll lock in the right position. Okay, so I put some epoxy on the shaft there to hold the music roll in the new position that I placed it. And if we test her out, and you'll notice it's locked in the correct position now on the music roll. So there she is. She's pretty dusty, as you can see up top. So I'm going to clean the case up a little bit before I put the movement in. Hey, I'd say that looks a lot better. I'll clean up those numbers a little bit too. Got all the dust off. There's one piece I got to glue on over here. Let's clean up those numbers. Difference? All right, let's finish them up. All right, there she is. Numbers are all done. Looks pretty nice. I'm gonna leave the men as they are because they're hard-working men and they get dirty. Okay, time to put the clock in the case. Now as for the hands, you can see they're also very dirty. We're just going to dump this, let them soak in the awesome solution with water while I put the clock in its case. And chain number 3 goes on the music box. There. Okay. There we go. All right, now we gotta lock the movement down with the 4 screws. All right, so I got the movement in there with the music box. This is connected up to the saw in the front. This is what actuates the music box as the clock warns. And this wire, as you can see, is way over here to the right. It needs to be up here to block this fan during warning. So I'm gonna, as I showed you earlier, I'm gonna adjust this way. That way when I lock it down, I'm not gonna cause that lever in the front to go up and stay that way. Okay, we'll see how that does right there. Throw it on the rack and test her out. Okay, here she is on the rack. I'm gonna put the weights on, give her a test run. Warning, warns. This catches the fly. That was a half hour. Warning, that catches the fly. There's the hour, it holds the fly. And there goes the music box. So it looks like my adjustments were right on. And all I need to do is put on the bellows so the bird cuckoos. And we should be in business. So I let the clock run for a couple hours without the pendulum, and I see the weights have gone down evenly. So I know that the clock is running properly, the music box is actuating on every hour, and it's striking every hour. So that's a way that I test the proper action of the clock in a quick way. The music box was a little weak, so I'm going to take it back out and bush that worn pivot on the governor. See if that helps. Alright, so here's the new bush on the music governor. And I'm going to reinstall the wheels. Let's see how she does. Alright, so here's the new bushing installed. Alright, so I rebushed the governor and I moved the comb a little bit forward so it's closer to the pins on the music roll. Here's how she sounds. Much better. And now with the new and improved music box installed, let's hear how she sounds. Way better. And here is the finished product. This video is dedicated to Cindy. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to repair your clock. I hope you enjoy it for many years to come. Thank you very much.